Greetings, welcome to the Metal Book Tavern. It's 2023 now, and everyone is making their book plans for 2023. On the 1st January, I made an Instagram post showing 5 books that I'm definitely 100% going to read this year. At the time, I only had these 5 books in mind, and I didn't think of other books I would read. Now there are more books I know I'm going to read this year. There are 5 categories. There are books that I haven't read yet. There are books that I have already begun reading. One book that I have to finish this year. I began in December and I have to finish this year. Books I want to reread, yes, I have such books in mind. And finally, an honorable mention. Let's start with the haven't read yet section, not in a particular order. The first book I want to show you, I didn't intend to read. In fact, I have read it twice. This book was a trophy, but then I watched a video on YouTube where a Russian guy showed his books in English collection. I saw that he had this series in English, and then suddenly I decided to reread at least the first book of the series in English. This book is literally a trophy. It was never intended to be read. But after watching that guy's video, I don't remember the name of the channel, I knew I wanted to reread A Game of Thrones. I think I already mentioned on my channel how much I was obsessed with this series, and I read them twice, and now I want to read again in English. Unfortunately, I don't have the rest of the books and I don't know if I'm going to get them, but I know very well that I am going to read the first one. I know that technically it belongs in the reread section, but since the book is in English, I put it in the haven't read section. The next book is Misery by Stephen King. Technically it also belongs to the to reread section. Since I read the book in the adapted version, I have a Penguin Readers edition, the 6th level, advanced level. But finally I got my hands on the original book, and I definitely want to read this so much. Especially given that the cover of the book is so good. I'd love to start reading this book now in winter, because it's winter season as I'm filming this. And the book is set during winter, the cover suggests it, so I'm excited. Next is the book that I got because of the title only. A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. When I found out about this book, I knew I had to have it. Fun fact about me, I was born and raised in Moscow, and the title got me. And I also like the cover very much. I keep looking at this book, it tempts me to read it as fast as possible. So one fun fact about this book, it's the cheapest book on my shelves. I never thought I'd get such an amazing copy for so cheap. But here I am. I'm excited to read this. I also made a list of books that I don't own yet, but I want to buy them because I'm interested in reading them. There were only 5 books so far, and just before I sat down to film this video, I bought one. And that book is The Amazing Maurice by Terry Pratchett. Full title, The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents. I have to say that I'm not a huge Terry Pratchett fan. His Discworld books didn't grow on me that much, well, except for Equal Rights. The thing that got me into this book is that Terry Pratchett has a specific English humor, and I thought that maybe the translation screwed the humor over, and it's better to read Terry Pratchett books in the original language, in English. And also this book is a standalone. This is not a series. It's set in the world of Discworld, but it has no sequels. It's a standalone novel. in the bread bins, dancing across tabletops, stealing pies from under the cooks' noses. So, what does every town need? A good piper to lure them away. That's where Maurice, a streetwise tomcat with the perfect money-making scam, comes in. Everyone has heard the story about the Pied Piper and the town full of rodents. So Maurice has found his very own Pied Piper and a plague of rats to trick gullible townsfolk into giving him lots of cash. All is going well until they arrive in the far-flung village of Bad Blintz. The annotation is very interesting, but I don't like the cover. It's not very good. I just don't like this at all. And I don't like this sticker, soon to be a major film. The book isn't very big, it's around 300 pages approximately, and the font is quite big, so I'm interested. In 2022 I got addicted to biographies of rock and metal musicians. Led Zeppelin, Metallica, what else? Motley Crue, and finally Rolling Stones. You know the biggest irony about these biographies? I don't listen to these bands at all. Or at least I knew at least a few songs by these bands. But I'm interested in their biographies anyway. This biography is quite big. It has around 500 pages approximately. That's the size of When Giants Walked the Earth by Mick Wall. And I hope this book is more exciting and interesting than When Giants Walk the Earth. I'm a little bit disappointed in that one because it felt very dry. I don't know, maybe that was because of the language barrier, but it felt too dry, too fact-focused. I hope this one is better. I am continuing reading Wheel of Time. This is the fourth novel, Shadow Rising. Unfortunately, this is the last Wheel of Time novel I own at the moment. The Russian publishing house Azbuka has released 9 novels already. I own 4 and I need to order the rest. I hope I manage to do that. If not, I'll have no other choice but to read online. This book is quite heavy. It has around 1,000 pages. Well, it's still less than your average The Stormlight Archive book. And so the list of books that I have yet to read is over. Now here are the books that I have already begun reading. The first one is obviously Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. The third book in Lord of the Rings. I finished the second one a few days before the new year. And on the 1st January I began reading this one. I'm already on chapter 2, The Passing of the Great Company. I intend to read this much faster than I read The Two Towers. For some reason that book was very challenging for me to read. I don't know why. I have to say that Return of the King is my favorite book in Lord of the Rings series. You know I have a problem with this edition, is that it has a very small font and I don't like it. And what's worse, that HarperCollins treats this series, this edition of the book, as if it's one full book. So therefore, when you open The Two Towers, it doesn't start with page 1, 2, 3 and so on. It starts with page 413. Anyway, that's not going to stop me. I am going to finish Lord of the Rings this year. I also have understood one thing about Tolkien, is that I kinda prefer any book of his to Lord of the Rings. As much as I love these books, I'd rather read The Hobbit or other books in Middle-earth. So the next book I began reading a few days ago, and I have already read a few pages, and that's The Children of Dune by Frank Herbert, the third book in Dune series. If you haven't seen my previous videos, this book has the first 3 books in Dune series. I also have another volume with the rest of the books. I read the first few pages of Children of Dune and I like them much more than the entire Dune Messiah book. And finally, the book that I began reading last night. Today is the 16th of January, 2023. I searched for this book everywhere. I didn't think I'd find it. And yesterday I was lucky to find A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. There's a video I made about 7 genres I don't read. And one of them is young adult. Sorry, that's definitely not my genre. However, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder sparked my interest. I liked the annotation and the cover. One fun fact about this book, there is a UK cover, the one I'm holding, and there is a US cover. The US edition is adapted for the US readers, so be careful. I'm finally on page 149. 5 years ago, schoolgirl Andy Bell was murdered by Celestine. The police know he did it. Everyone in town knows he did it. But having grown up in the same small town that was consumed by the murder, Pippa Fitz-Amobi isn't so sure. When she chooses the case as the topic for her final year project, she starts to uncover secrets that someone in town desperately wants to stay hidden. And if the real killer is still out there, how far will they go to keep Pip from the truth? I have to say that I read 149 pages and this book is claiming to be a 5-star read from me. So I'm currently editing this video. And by the time I'm editing this, I have already finished reading this book and I loved it very much. And I will discuss the book properly in one of my next videos. And by the way, I have a Goodreads account. I made it a year ago, but I didn't bother being active on Goodreads until the beginning of this year. So I'm very active on Goodreads right now. Now let's go to the section of the books that I have to finish this year. I began this one in December. I thought that I had reached the half of the book, but I was wrong. I read around 40%. Therefore, this book is going to be considered a 2023 read, and that's Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. I'm using a visit card for a bookmark because when I took the book, this visit card happened to be near the table and I was too lazy to pick up a bookmark, so I used this. I already have a few favorite moments in this book. I like it very much and I like the edition. Now we're getting to 2 books that I bought and read in 2020 and now I want to read them again. The first one is On Fairy Stories by J.R.R. Tolkien. J.R.R. Tolkien's On Fairy Stories is his most studied and most quoted essay, an exemplary personal statement of his own views on the role of imagination in literature and an intellectual tour de force vital for understanding Tolkien's achievement in writing The Lord of the Rings. Contained within is an introduction to Tolkien's original 1939 lecture and the history of the writing of On Fairy Stories, with previously unseen material. The realm of fairy story is wide and deep and high and filled with many things. All manner of beasts and birds are found there. Shoreless seas and the stars uncounted, beauty that is an enchantment and an ever-present peril, both joy and sorrow as sharp as a sword. J.R.R. Tolkien. I read this essay in 2020 and I have been constantly thinking about it, and there were a few moments that got my attention. Maybe I should do a separate video about this book and what Tolkien was trying to say. I think this book is going to enter my all-time favorite books list. Tolkien suggests some very interesting ideas about fantasy and escapism and things like that. So therefore I'm interested to read this again and allow this become one of my favorite books. The deal is that when I read the book, it doesn't instantly become my favorite until later, and vice versa. And the second book I want to read, I also read in 2020, and that's Bohemian Rhapsody, the definitive biography of Freddie Mercury by Leslie Ann Jones. This is the first rock and metal biography that I read. In this outstanding biography, former rock journalist Leslie Ann Jones, who toured with Queen, mines mythology, rumor and gossip to reveal a shy and enchanting individual. From Freddie's birth in Zanzibar to his family's escape to London, Queen's phenomenal success, and Mercury's tragic death from AIDS, no stone is left unturned. Based on unprecedented access to key figures, this riveting biography is an accurate account, not only of how the world saw Freddie, but of how the legend saw himself. Excuse me, it's a little bit hard for me to read in English aloud because there are some words that I may mispronounce, sorry. Just like with On Fairy Stories, I keep thinking about this book, and after I read this may become one of my favorites. And finally, an honorable mention. Best Fairy Tales by Hans Christian Andersen. I made a reading vlog where I read Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales. I got this book particularly for one fairy tale. Those of you who watched the video know which tale. However, I am not going to stop reading Andersen, and I decided to continue reading these tales. I already read two. It's The Butterfly and Little Klaus and Big Klaus. This is honorable mention, not continuing to read, because I may open this book at any tale, read it, put it back, and so on. When I feel the need to read, but I don't have the energy or something else prevents me, I pick Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales. I do have more ideas involving Hans Christian Andersen. I'm not going to stop at only my reading vlog. Anyway, that's all. These are all the books I want to read or reread or continue to read so far. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my video. What books do you want to read this year? Let me know down in the comments. See you next time. Goodbye.